the static clears. Unwanted brotherhood of tears. Grief can weigh us down alone, but here we find a common home. The voices speak to heart and soul. In darker times they make us whole. Through Jesus' light we find our way. In every night there comes a day. From shadows to the dawn we rise, hope reflected in our eyes.
Welcome to the Unwanted Fraternity Podcast. I'm Jen Tonkinson, and I'm here again with my husband, Greg Tonkinson, and we're so glad that you're joining us again on our podcast. Just want to give a quick shout out to the Herzog Foundation. We are so grateful to be partnering with this amazing organization. If you are a Christian educator, a parent, a church leader, someone who's looking to find out more information about how you can draw the young generation closer to Christ, I encourage you to go onto their website. They have so many events that they have planned for educators that you can gain so much knowledge, but also they have a really incredible podcast network where you can learn about a variety of different things. So that website is herzogfoundation.com/podcast. You'll find amazing things there. Well, right now we're in the middle, or just beginning the deep dive into Jerry Sittser's book, A Grace Disguised. And we started our last week just kind of getting into chapters 1 and 2. And today we're going to focus on chapter 3, which is called Darkness Closes In. And as we dive into this chapter, I do want to take a minute to just kind of discuss where my head has been in the last couple of days. So for our listeners who don't know, I don't think we've actually shared this, but a year ago yesterday, Greg and I have a blended family. So my firstborn is 20, and last year he was in a horrific motorcycle accident and had to be airlifted to the local hospital. We got a phone call at, I think it was like 10 in the morning, maybe, from a bystander.
Yeah,
and
we were out and about.
Yeah, we were out and about. It was Labor Day, and the phone had rung 4 times, and I was like, "That's odd," And so then I, have Life 360, so I'm seeing where Zach is, and he just kind of stopped in the middle of the road at this going up to Payson, and I just had this horrible feeling, and so the phone rings again, and I'm like, "Hey, Zach, are you okay?" And it was a stranger's voice, and he said, "Your son's been in a really bad accident and he's being airlifted to a local hospital. He's still conscious, and so just want you to know that." And he said, if I can't remember this guy's name, but if he's listening, you did the exact right thing. He said, "I know you're not going to process what I'm saying, so I need you to write it down. Do you have paper?" And I said, "I'm looking for stuff. I'm frantic. I can't process anything." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to repeat this several times to you, and I need you to repeat it back to me." He was so calm, and it makes me cry to think about it, but just so helpful at that time. And anyway, we got the information. He hung up, and again was just so gracious to me. And we get to the hospital, and for an hour, we didn't know what we were going to see. And I can't put words to what the feeling is when you can't breathe in that moment of the unknown. And that's just, what I was thinking about yesterday. Zach he survived it. He is, he could have been paralyzed. He honestly should have died. And we have him still, and he is recovered and back at work and living on his own. And we are so very grateful for all the things that are good in his life. But I kept thinking, how do you get through the next part? If it doesn't end well, you show up at the hospital and your life changes forever. Because the moment that I walked into the hospital, I could barely feel my legs, and I couldn't even stop crying, and I couldn't breathe. And as I read this book, and I think about the outcome that he felt, like mine's so minor because I knew he was still conscious, or I knew I was going to get to hopefully see him. I didn't know what I was going to see. If he was paralyzed or whatever, I didn't know anything about that. But Jerry didn't have that opportunity. And the emotion that I went through was nowhere near his experience. And it really sucked to go through what the feelings that I went through. Like, it just, I guess it gave me a glimpse of what the catastrophic devastation feels like. Just, I mean, not even a glimpse, just a very tiny fingernail of that. But yet, when I was thinking about this yesterday, I thought, those of us who haven't gone through that catastrophic loss can come across sometimes as insensitive. Like we don't know what catastrophic loss feels like because if we're connected to someone like that. But I think it's healthy to hear the other side of it too, to know that like I can't ever like at this stage of life cannot say to you like, I know what it feels like to lose a spouse. I don't want to feel like that. I want you around, Greg, for as long as I can have you. But I guess I have a tinge of like the emotional devastation that will happen when you have news that you can't control. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that what you experienced a year ago today is what, we don't wish that upon anyone. I think that what we experienced, but in particular you, when we got to the hospital, well, on the drive over to the hospital, you didn't know they're air vacuuming him from a street to a hospital, and that's all the information we had.
Yeah.
We didn't have any information about he's okay, he's banged up, like we don't know. And we just know enough to know you don't get into a motorcycle accident and get air vac'd without serious damage, if not fatality.
Right.
So I think what you experienced on the way to the hospital was something that I've experienced, that Jerry experienced, and that is, and many of our listeners have experienced as well, there is a very non-Hollywood reality to death that we don't interface with every day, nor should we. But when you do interface with it, it's indescribable in terms of what you're going through. But it's as real as we were driving in that car. And so you weren't anticipating it. You just got news, and now you are feeling something. And the best way I think to describe it is you are feeling loss at a level you've never felt before. And by the way, even if you've experienced like loss of maybe an extended family member or a friend maybe, or a coworker, absolutely those relationships are meaningful, and they should be meaningful. And maybe someone has a story where their closest person in their life was their grandparent or coworker or best friend. But typically speaking, your nuclear family is kind of representative of the depth of your love. That for most people, generally speaking, when they think of a spouse and or kids, that is when you ask them about the depth of their love, like who do you love the most, or what experiences have you had with love the most, it typically revolves around those people. And now here's one of those people that you're being told, we don't know if he's still alive or not. So the mind and heart and just, they go into this space that, again, I think Jerry describes in A Grace Disguised, that I write in Unwanted Fraternity, And you don't have to have experienced it to appreciate it, maybe, to sympathize, but to empathize. I think what you experienced a year ago brought you right to that doorstep of, I don't even know what's happening right now to me, but also this tension of I'm living in the moment, I'm in present reality, and this is really happening. Like, death really happens, loss really happens, and because we don't experience it daily, and for many of us, it's maybe been years or even decades, that when it does happen, it just rocks your world. There's no other way to explain it in a very morose way. It just rocks your world. And I would just say, in our case with Zachary, the next step, I guess, and what you did not experience, praise God, is if that doctor came out of the ER and said, I'm sorry. Like, he came out of ICU and said, we could not save your son. Then then we'd be talking a year later, and you would read Jerry's book, you read my book, whatever, and you would have just a more complete understanding, just because now, when people say, I almost lost my loved one, or I almost lost my son, absolutely, that is catastrophic in and of itself. Just to be in a position where you could have, like, we didn't know, we could have lost him that day. But to get the news that we didn't, and then 24 hours to get the news that he wasn't paralyzed, that he was actually coming home from the hospital, that he was going to live with us for, going through PT and rehab. There is a reality to our situation in Zachary's case, where that feeling of, I almost lost my child, was quickly absorbed with we didn't lose our child. Like, we get to see him again. And there is like a hope in that. There's a relief in that. There's a joy in that. And I know I experienced it. I know Jerry, when he writes in A Grace Disguised, had experienced it. When you hear, or in Jerry's case, see your life, the life of your loved one go, there is no other side to that. There is no, I get to wake up tomorrow with hope. I get to wake up with seeing that person again, right? And so, we don't wish this upon anyone, but there is, like, now now what it's like to even feel like that a year ago today, we could have been planning Zachary's funeral.
Right.
And for about 2 hours, we didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's just a really, really tough place to be.
And I think that's a great segue into what this chapter talks about, darkness closes in.
Yep.
Because Jerry says that there was a point shortly thereafter where he says, he describes the moment where he recognized he was standing in the darkness of grief. And he recalls a dream that he had where he really couldn't escape the darkness. And he said at that point, he lost all hope, collapsed to the ground, and fell into despair in the dream.
Yep.
But when he awoke, he thought, I thought at that moment, I'm going to live in darkness forever. I felt absolute terror in my soul. And so I wanted to ask you, Greg, who's also gone through this, was there I feel like the answer is yes, there was a moment.
Right.
At what point did you get to that moment? And second part of that question, how did you get out of it? Because I can't imagine getting out of it after, like, just the glimpse I had. Like, I really did think about that yesterday. I was like, what if he didn't have him anymore? How do I do life? Like, how do I love my kids still? How do I love my husband still? How do I not be just stuck in my bedroom for the rest of my life? I don't understand how you do that.
Yeah. And again, We are grateful for God sparing Zachary's life. It was, a week ago, we had a family dinner, and we went around and said, like, in the past, since the summer, the past 3 months, how have you grown? And all the kids were just talking about various things. We have, again, 5 kids and then a daughter-in-law. So there were 8 of us, I guess, around the table. And I thought Zachary's answer was maybe the most astute out of everyone's. He just said, I've grown a lot since June, in the past 3 months. And I just thought, yeah, so here we go again. Like, we get to see, like, September, whatever, let's say 3rd, 2024 was like his day one of what could have been, probably what should have been, which is the end of your life, or your life so drastically changed with paralysis or, quadriplegic or whatever, to, no, he's living on his own, he's working, not that it's back to normal, but almost, like, about as close as you could get back to normal. And I listened to that 2 weeks ago, and I just thought, see, this is what everyone who has lost a loved one doesn't get. You don't get the hey, a year later I've grown a lot. You don't get the hey, a year later it's my birthday. You don't get the hey, you're gonna walk me down the aisle. Like, so at some point, with everyone who's lost a loved one, that reality sets in. And I'm not sure, for some maybe it comes in a moment, for others it's a slow burn. But at one point or another, everyone does cross over that line of, I'm still going to live as if it didn't happen, into it really did happen, and these are all the ramifications of it happening. And your mind just goes crazy with listing all of the things that you will never get to do with that person ever again, this side of heaven. And so Jerry writes about it very eloquently again, dark despair. Some people call it depression. Some people call it, a moment, a season, a time where I couldn't get out of bed. For all of us, it hits a little different. For me, it was in my car. It was driving, and maybe it wasn't a season as much as it was almost every time I got in my car, primarily because Leanne was killed in a car. And so I've always just been on high alert when I get into a car as to this could happen to anyone at any time. But also looking over at the passenger seat and just being reminded every single day after the accident, that's never going to be filled by her again. Like, it's a visceral moment that throws you as far from whatever you were going to or planned for the day into a funk, into despair, into the darkest of thoughts. And you can live in those for quite some time. Hours can pass, days can pass. And I wish, honestly, that there was some indicator as to when that would happen or what the onset would be. But I just think for all of us, it's just a little different.
He said that his was at night. So, and because he said during the day he would do his job, and then he would come home, help with the kids. And I think you're very familiar with that situation. Yep. And then he said he would go to his room to go to bed, and that's when the darkness was there, the quiet, the memories, the racing thoughts in your mind. Yeah,
it's almost like a prison, because let's say it's 9:30 at night. Well, you don't have anything to do until, let's say, 5:30 the next morning. So that's 8 hours worth of what do I do? And pragmatically, you run the list of options. Well, I could call a friend. Well, do they want to hear from me? Like, they're busy with their own families, with their own life. Well, I could read a book. Well, I'm not really in the mood for reading right now. Mm-hmm. Well, I could watch TV. Okay, and by the way, we've all watched TV to where it numbs us. I don't really want to do that again. Like, you just run through the options, and before you know it, you're staring around four walls that really do feel like a prison cell. Yes, I could go somewhere, but my kids are in bed. I can't leave them. So here I am. I'm stuck. Like, what do you want me to do? And by the way, before our listeners start in with, well, Greg, you could pray and, you could read the Bible. Yes, absolutely. And we can and should. And by the way, we have done that. So please don't hear me say like I never did that. But nor am I going to say I always did that. Mm-hmm. Like Jerry, I think there's just moments of reality where you look around and think, this is my life. This is my new reality. Mm-hmm. And just to, I guess, wrap up that point, you don't know when you're going to work through that reality. So I think for a lot of us, like you and I kid a lot about now that we're later in life, should one of us pass away? Do we stay single, remarried? We kind of joke about that in a very light way, but that's in a very safe space to do that. Like, we're not, planning on that. But when Jerry and I got the news, it became our reality the next day. Like, mm-hmm. The next day, we're looking at these four walls thinking, is this going to be my life? And there's no answer to that. For Jerry, for myself, God didn't like reach down and say, no, I've got a plan for you. It's going to include another spouse. It's going to,
couple of years.
Jerry got remarried. I got remarried. We didn't know that. Mm-hmm. So you're looking around week 3, week 4 after the funeral, because that first week, everything's heightened. Everything's intense. You get to week 4 or so, you're looking around thinking, maybe the dust has settled for, the logistics of everything. I'm still here. I'm still waking up. I'm still going to bed. I'm still staring at these 4 walls. And I've got a ton of more responsibilities now in terms of single parenting, whatever. Mm-hmm. It can be death on wheels, really.
Well, Jerry said that he reached out to his sister and explained his dream to her. And her advice was, plunge into the darkness. Just go for it. And that moment for him, he said, I discovered in that moment that I had the power to choose the direction that my life would head in. And I love that because, yes, you can read scripture and you can pray and God can speak to your heart, but he's not going to reach down and pick you up and attach strings to you like a puppet and walk you out the door and make you start doing life. He's going to give you a choice.
Yep.
And if you're not yet meeting him in that choice of doing life, he's still going to love you through your sadness and your grief and hear your cries. But there does come a point, and I think, like, I love what you said, you don't know when that time is, where, as Jerry said, you just have to choose the direction your life's going to go.
I couldn't agree more. And Jerry says this in the book, but I'll just affirm, nothing is easy, and nothing is like, well, I just, since doing that, everything went the way I wanted it to, but I do appreciate there is a moment where you do have to stare your reality in the face and say, death doesn't win. The Bible is clear, death has no sting. And there is a moment where I think all of us in catastrophic instances will reach that bridge to where we do need to take that first step onto the bridge and say, I get to determine how this gets to be played out by way of as his sister said, stepping into it, mm-hmm. rather than running, hiding, justifying. I'm going to step into it and see what happens. And I think the beautiful part about that is you're not stepping in alone. You're stepping in with Christ. If you're a Christ follower, you're stepping into that reality, the darkness, so to speak, with Christ. And who else would you want to do that with? Is it going to be difficult? Absolutely. Why? Because it's unknown. You're stepping into a new reality that you've never experienced before. I would say this, if something were to ever happen to you or the kids, because like a year ago, when you got the call, I started making plans for funeral arrangements, for plots, for everything. And while to our listeners that may sound callous or it may sound like emotionally detached, I think part of that was because I've been through it. I know that regardless of how emotional this is going to get over the next 24 hours and hearing the news, and these things have to get done and somebody has to do them. And so if that's the job I have over the next week or whatever, then that's what I'm going to do. But I think what helped prepare me for that was I went through it 15 years ago. I know those feelings, and though I don't wish them upon anyone, don't want to experience them again, it's like when you get sick for the first time. I don't know, like you throw up or something, like you're not used to it, and you're like, what is happening? Well, the second time you just kind of know, hey, this is what this is going to feel like. Mm-hmm. Yes, it will be different, obviously, in every case, but I want to step into that reality with Christ and take it day by day. And it's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do.
And I'm glad you didn't share that all with me during that time we were driving to the hospital, because it would have been like, I really do think you
don't ever want to come across as, I know what to do here.
Right.
You don't know what to do.
And you were so good. You were very, you honestly didn't say much at all. You got on the phone, you got all the kids there, all of our family showed up. Everybody was there before we could. Honestly, they got there before us, I think.
Well, like when Leanne passed away, the police officer shows up at my door. I call my brother, and I don't why, there's no rhyme or reason. I just called someone. He happened to be his wife, picked up the phone. And then within 25, 30 minutes, my house is filled with people. I didn't do that. Mm-hmm. I didn't call those people. Like, someone's got to be in your space that can handle the facts of the matter. And in their case, God had given them the responsibility to start making phone calls. And as hard as those I've often tried to relive, like, what is that like? Your brother just calls you and tells you his wife just passed away, and now you have the responsibility of calling other people and sharing that news. Like, who wants that responsibility? So praise God that they're pretty level-headed people in terms of logistics, and they got the job done. Like, and a year ago I felt like maybe that's my time to just start making phone calls and whatnot. So, but yeah, it hits all of us a little different.
And on that note, before I jump into the next point with Jerry, I think it's super important to read the room with the other person. So at that point, I needed to just sit by my kids and cry and just pray. Like, I just needed to do that. Like, there's nothing that you could have said to me to change my situation. And so you were just physically supportive of me by being near me, but you let me just process the way I processed. And that was just beyond helpful. Jerry says that it took him a while to get, once he plunged into that darkness. And I'm same with you. You don't know how long it's going to take for you to actually walk it well. Because I think your tendency in your human nature is you want to avoid it because it doesn't feel good. And so it probably is a day-to-day thing. Like, hey, today I'm going to walk in the darkness that I feel with Christ, until the evening. Like you set a goal. That's all I can give you today. And that's kind of how he was talking. He was like, he was just so sad and he kind of fumbled through life, and he couldn't really make sense of it. But I love this part, because we've talked a little bit about this on our past episodes about prayer. And he said that part of his walking in the darkness was he wanted to pray and many, many times, but he just didn't know how to do, he knew how to pray. He didn't know what to pray sometimes. And he said he said, I felt like just groaning to the Lord, and letting God figure that out. But he said, I wanted to pray, but I had no idea what to say. I was struck dumb by my own pain. Groans became the only language I could use, if even that. But I believed it was a language enough for God to understand. And he references how Paul wrote about this in Romans. And there is such an intimacy with the Lord that it's okay. You've said this many times. It's okay just to cry and just groan of anguish to the Lord, because he understands that.
Yeah.
And he's not asking you to have these eloquent words of okay, today, God, I'm going to get up and I'm going to sit in my darkness. I'm going to walk in my darkness, and you're going to walk with me. And here are the things that we should accomplish today, like setting goals, nothing. You can just get up and know that the Lord knows you're in darkness that day. And he's walking with you. You're walking with him. Maybe your pray without ceasing in that moment is just, I'm glad you're here, God. And that's it for the day. That's maybe all you have. And that is awesome that you are connecting with him as you walk through that darkness each step.
Yep. Yeah. Psalm 56, David, you've collected my tears in your bottle, you recorded each one in your book. You have to appreciate that God, you're and I don't want this to sound crass, but you're not the first one to go through catastrophic loss. So yes, it's yours and you can't escape it. You're living it, but please, please, please know that God and his compassion, his love, his profound desire to be tender toward you in your grief. That's his desire, and that's set forth even when we go back to the Bible and say, okay, I'm the only one. No, you're not. There are multitudes of people that have come before you that take your cue, at least from a fraternity perspective. You're in the fraternity together, and none of us want to be here. But be encouraged that you can look around and be comforted that other people have expressed deep, deep pain like you're going through, including King David. So when he says, you've collected all my tears in your bottle, you've recorded each one in your book, when you read that after catastrophic loss, you get King David. You know what that's like. And, symbolically, you have your own bottle and you're putting your tears in them day and night. And listen, I will go to my grave believing that I'm not a crier, that I don't express emotion that well. Well, you should have seen me in 2010. I mean, just a wreck. And maybe I'm not as emotional because I've used up all my tears. I don't know, but you weep hard, and it's ugly weeping. It's not. Don't get the cameras out. This is because it's raw. It's intimate. It is the best you know what to do. You don't you groan and weep because you don't know what else to do. It's your soul is saying to God, I don't know if this is a language. I don't know if my emotions are communicating anything. I just can't express my pain in any other way than to groan, to weep, and to do that day over day over day over day. And I love Jerry's posture, which is God gets you. He invites that. So please, if you're out there and you're considering stopping that, I would encourage you to reconsider that. Cry out to the Lord, live in his presence, sit at his feet with your bottle of tears, and know that God has intimate knowledge of your situation, and he is right there with you.
That's so good. That is really, really good advice. I have another question, but I think I might save it to the next time, because I feel like the next question I'm going to ask in regards to that will take us into a pretty, profound conversation. Because
so we call that a teaser.
It's a teaser for
So what's the
next time.
teaser question?
Okay, so we're not going to go into it, but is it possible?
So we'll cut to commercial as soon as you ask it.
Is it possible to feel sorrow for the rest of your life and yet find joy at the same time? And that's Jerry's question. And I wrote it down because I thought that, like, there's a moment when you, and I don't want to get into this, but that moment struck me as like, when does that happen?
Right.
When you have both at the same time, because they're an
Right.
oxymoron, sorrow and joy.
Yeah, that will take up a small group.
Yeah. So
Get together your small groups and ask that this week.
So we'll end with that question, but we'll talk about it next time. The next chapter, The Silent Scream of Pain, is also going to be on our agenda. So thank you for joining us today on the Unwanted Fraternity. We're so
Get the
grateful.
book. Buy the book.
Buy the book, yes. We're so grateful that Jerry took the time to write this. I'm just very inspired. I love his language. I love reading this book.
You know, that book's, I think, right, almost 20 years old.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been around for that long.
Goodness. Well, thank you, Jerry.
When I tell people, because that's on my recommended reading list for grief, and a lot of people have read it for sure, like a lot. But a lot of people haven't, and I'm thinking, man, where would I have been without that resource? So please, if you're on the beginning stages or wherever you're at, but especially in those new stages of grief, especially catastrophic grief, please, we will buy you a copy. Somehow get a Grace Disguised into your hands. You will be so blessed to have done so.
Yes. All right. Well, we will be back again next week with our next episode. And as you go through this week, please know that we would love to hear from you. If you have prayer requests, you can find us on social media with Instagram and Facebook. And then always reach out to us on our website, unwantedfraternity.com. And remember that you do not have to go through this alone. We'll see you next time.
Turn on the mic, the static clears. Unwanted brotherhood of tears. Grief can weigh us down alone, but here we find a common home. The voices speak to heart and soul. In darker times they make us whole. Through Jesus' light we find our way. In every night, there comes a day. From shadows to the dawn we rise. Hope reflected in our